Right, racist and wrong. Prime Minister didn't say that, but a spokesperson did after he's branded the comments made by a major Tory party donor about the first woman black MP, Diane Abbott, overnight. The comments came from Frank Hester.
Yeah, and he is one of the party's biggest donors. He gave £10 million to the Conservatives, and he told a meeting that Diane Abbott should be shot and made him want to hate all black women. He has since apologised.
However, it's the lack of immediate condemnation of his remarks which are now causing the Prime Minister a political headache. Let's go to James Price, who joins us now. He's former Chief of Staff to Nadhim Zahawi. James, this is the whole thing. What has taken the Prime Minister? Why does he need a spokesperson to say this?
Well, I think that these stories come along and they blow out of the water the kind of carefully crafted government grid, the kind of narrative, the things the government would like to be talking about on the day. And, you know, he is the Prime Minister of a major nuclear world economic power, and one would hope that he's got other things he has to do on the start of a week to get things going again. Obviously, everybody, you know, it's stupid and unpleasant to have said these things. There was this, was it racist or was it just unwise? Right, I think probably not. I'm not the best place to say. I wouldn't have said these things. I'm sure this chap, thinking back, wouldn't have wanted to have said any of this stuff.
Yeah, but wait a minute. Well dodged, whatever. If I was the Prime Minister, I would immediately know if this was right or wrong. It's obviously wrong. I don't know why the man isn't saying it, why he needs someone else to say it for him. How much of it's got to do with 10 million quid he'll look like having to hand back?
Yeah, I think that gets to the nub of it, doesn't it? Although it does seem a very odd punishment for this guy to have said something stupid, and what does he get in return? He gets his £10 million back?
That's true, but I mean, look, to me, what this smells of is weakness from the Prime Minister, and he was quite clearly pushed into a corner by Kemi Badenoch, who came out and called it and said this is racist, let's call a spade a spade. William Hague, former Conservative Party leader, also saying that, and it took the Prime Minister following on from what they were saying to actually change his position. And that's not a good look.
Yeah, I think it certainly speaks very well of Kemi Badenoch that she's able just to come out and, as you say, just set these things straight. And she's had these sorts of issues in a previous brief. She used to be the Women and Equalities Minister as well, so she's kind of quite well placed to work on these things. I like to think that perhaps that there's just a level of reticence to wade into these sorts of issues because people are so desperate not to say the wrong thing and get in trouble. I don't think that it's just a case that they want to...
Well, you could hardly say the wrong thing. There's only the right thing to say now.
You can't stand on the steps of Number 10 and say you want the highest standards of decency within your cabinet and then just call something wrong but not say why. You've got the time and space to say something's wrong, but you can't admit what it's wrong, what the grievance is. I mean, it's unacceptable. He got there in the end, but is it too late for him? When we've heard about this emergency meeting with the 1922 committee behind closed doors, he's in a very difficult position, Rishi Sunak. He's on thin ice, isn't he?
I wouldn't envy him in this position right now. It just seems it's one more difficult thing after another. I think that maybe the problem he's got in this particular case is that we're so used to cancel culture now, right? Someone says something from a long time ago. I think these comments were 5 years ago. Well, the world's changed quite a lot, even in 5 years. Stupid things. So this guy who's a super successful businessman, employs lots of people, is his whole life to be ruined by this issue now? I think it was Kemi Badenoch that said there should be a kind of grace period now, and that it is things like forgiveness that has made the modern world. And let's hope that Rishi can now get back to focusing on the massive to-do.
I can't see what your grace period is, saying it makes you want to hate all black women or shoot this woman. I don't really see how that was... it wasn't so bad to say that 5 years ago. Don't get that, mate.
No, I think that's a fair point. But I think that, what is the context of this? Was he trying to be, I don't know, one of the lads in a meeting and sort of go on like that and try and think, oh, isn't this funny? I'm trying to get a bit of banter. He's a successful software company engineer. Maybe they're not known for their sense of humour.
But how many people from diverse backgrounds, Rishi Sunak amongst them, yesterday must have been asking themselves, if the government are not going to call out racism, then what does that say about my status in this country, in society? People who've been born in Britain, who serve, like Rishi Sunak, serving his country, but people are afraid to call... it's just such a bad message to be sending out.
Yeah, I think that's fair. My old boss, you mentioned Nadhim Zahawi, born in Baghdad, came over here when he was 9 years old, fleeing Saddam Hussein's death squads, subject of all kinds of horrendous abuse. But I think, we lose sight of what are the real problems here in society. Is it this guy saying these stupid things? It's not the most awful race crime that's ever happened. When you look at Diane Abbott, some of the things that she's come out and said, Chairman Mao, on balance, did more good than harm. The man was responsible for the deaths of more people than anyone in human history under his kind of communist ideology. She's currently not got the Labour whip because she said that Jewish people and Roma people can't suffer racism themselves. So, it's almost a way of kind of her being able to dodge this now.
Well, two MPs have been killed in the past 5 years, murdered in the past 5 years. So I just still think it's a no-go, completely taboo area. But let me ask you something else, James. 10 million quid. Where does the Conservative Party come up with 10 million quid? It's OK, people say, hand this money back. Could they actually do that? Would they have their access to £10 million?
Well, I think people always get this, the scale of money in British politics is always massively overestimated, right? This is the biggest donation that the Tories have ever had, the Labour Party bankrolled by the trade unions. But the amount of money in British politics is really small fry, and I've been there on the inside. The amount of influence that it gets you is wonderfully really, really small. You're going to talk about the American election coming up soon. It's billions of dollars that get spent on that, and they have real influence in these things. But in Britain, wonderfully, you can only spend, 12 grand in an election campaign per constituency. I think we're really lucky that we don't have that kind of money influencing politics.
So you don't think, despite the calls, you don't think Sunak or the Tories would be able to put their hands in the till and say, look, OK, have this 10 million quid back?
Well, I think that the Prime Minister personally could probably fill the stopgap should he need to. I think his wealth has been fairly widely reported. But I do think that, this is money at the end of the day that's going to go on just paying the salaries of ordinary people inside the Conservative Party who believe in the missions of the Tories and all these sorts of things coming into the election. So that money to go back to line the pockets of a guy who's already quite rich at the expense of frankly, of people's jobs going into the election. I think that perhaps the guy's punishment enough is being kind of castigated by the world's media for now, and if he gets his money back as well, he could just take himself on a nice holiday rather it be spent on trying to fight the Labour Party, as far as I'm concerned.
Let's talk about the Post Office, shall we? The government putting through emergency legislation to exonerate the wrongfully convicted. Hugely welcome news. Slight concern that a couple of people might slip through the net who are actually guilty of crimes and could be exonerated, but on the balance, this is a good move.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're the one sub-postmaster who was stealing things, you've got to be thinking, how did I get away with this now? But no, you're completely right. By and large, what it shows as well is that when there's enough pressure on something, that Parliament can actually act. We've been seeing, there's not a huge amount of legislation being done at the moment, the scale of challenges that Britain has. And, we don't see that the British state is acting with the kind of speed that it needs to. And it is upsetting that it's taken a television drama for this kind of injustice to be righted, but at least it has been.
And there's going to be a small amount of compensation given out to all of those involved, but not anything like what they're owed. That's not likely to happen in this Parliament, is it?
I fear that's probably the case. But again, maybe this can set a precedent for when other scandals like this come along again, that people will actually be listened to, and it won't take Mr. Bates versus the Post Office to get these kind of things going. We can't have government being done by this. And I think it just shows another structural weakness with what I think is the real problem in the United Kingdom at the moment, which is that the civil service is so stuck in the mud and not able to get anything done. We can't build any infrastructure, we can't build any houses, we can't do any of these things. And it takes a television drama for us even to get justice for these poor postmasters.
OK, James, thank you. Interesting take on things. James is a political commentator. Thank you very much indeed.